It is an honor and a privilege to be interviewing Terry Shaw today, who's been a townie for years and years. And Terry, what I love about your post is you talk so much about just down and dirty day to day composites. I mean, dentistry for the real man. I mean, a lot of people want to do, they want to talk about veneers or they want to talk about CAD CAM or lasers or all this fancy dancy stuff. But as a real dentist in Phoenix and you're a real dentist in Canada, for every time you do a veneer case, you're probably going to do what, 500 direct composites?
Easily.
Easily. And
Easily.
you're the man. So tell us about yourself. Now you live north of Maine. You're north of Maine.
Actually, we're due east of Maine. We're about 70 miles from the top of Maine. We're due east. Actually, out over there. So there was no hospital in Perth-Andover. It's a very small community, and we have a hospital now, but we didn't then.
Very good. And didn't they find some Viking explorer ships there like 10 years ago?
That's in Lansdowne Meadows up in Newfoundland. It's about 1,200 miles east of here, way out towards Greenland. Actually, Newfoundland's quite a ways away from here. But they did. My wife and I have been there. They found a lot of trinkets and needles, and it definitely was Vikings. Definitely.
About what? About 1000 AD?
Yeah, from 1000 AD. Yeah, my wife actually is Danish, so her parents came from Denmark and back in '48. So she's a Viking.
So what do they figure? They just turned around and left, or do you think they tried?
No, they were there. They were there for quite a few years, and they seemed. Some people seem to get down the coast because they talk about Vineland, and there's certainly no wineland, and there's no certainly wines growing in Newfoundland, and they think they went down the coast, and they're just not sure how far they went. Cape Cod's down the coast of the United States and Canada. They went down the east coast.
But they died out, or do they?
No, I think they probably went home, and they probably went back to Iceland and Greenland and that sort of thing. I don't know. We're just speculating here.
Huh. Well, and you graduated from probably the most famous dental school that ever lived in the history of ever since Facebook came out, the University of Dalhousie, where a couple of young boys were posting girly pictures and inappropriate comments. And did that?
I'm not sure how many pictures they posted, but they posted some pretty idiotic, dumb comments, and they're paying the price for it, really. They probably aren't. Some of them aren't going to graduate this year. They were fourth-year dental students, and just testosterone got a hold of them, I guess, and sort of like locker room chatter. And it should never have hit the news, really. I don't think. But anyway.
Yeah, I've raised 4 boys. They're currently 19, 21, 23, and 25. So I've dealt with a lot of boy issues, and I talked to many dental school deans. You know what dental school deans actually tell me? They tell me that girls are starting to reach menarche at like 10% by age 10, and they go through their crazy period. They're done being crazy in the middle of high school, and boys go to college, and that's when they get up to 1,200 milligrams of testosterone per deciliter, and I think last time at 52, I had mine checked, I'm at like 400, and they just do the craziest, dumbest thing. College are their craziest years, and
I think their age matches their IQ at that point.
Yeah, well put. My boys, it's funny, they'd always ask me what time they'd have to be home, and I'd say, because all their other friends had a curfew, like it was based on, where the sun was in position to the earth or moon, and I'd always say, well, I want to know who you're out with. And they'd say, I'm out with Alan Funk. I'd say, okay, well, you need to be home at 9 o'clock. And they're like, Dad. And then they'd say another boy, and I'd say, if you're with that boy, you can stay with him for 40 days and 40 nights. I'm not worried about that kid. But so Terry, tell me this. Has CAD CAM machines have replaced a lot of MOD composites? I noticed you place so many amazing cases on Dental Town. Tell us your composite technique and what your thoughts are on composites.
Well, a lot of the crazy stuff. I was Amalgam up to about 83, 84, and ran into Ron Jordan in Moncton at a course, and he was talking about posterior composites, and that was way back when we put liquid acid etch all over teeth and sort of wink, wink, don't let it touch the dentin. And I started doing a lot of composites back in probably 84, 85, 86 along there. Pretty well left the amalgam behind, just because it tended to bond the tooth together. And over the years in the 90s, I used to do quite a few Maryland bridges. It always broke my heart to have to cut into the lingual of an upper tooth and shave away some good healthy tooth structure to make room for my metal. And also sometimes you didn't take quite enough off, and a lot of the failures probably were due to maybe inadequate enamel removal. You got thin metal, it flexes and pops off. And probably in 91, 92, 93, I started doing them with composite. And lo and behold, they worked. And I probably have done 600, 700 of things by now. And I just do them routinely in composite. I don't have to touch a tooth. There's no enamel taken away. And the damn things work. I got some that are 5, 10, 20 years old, never been touched. I mean, some of them do crack. I just run a big diamond through and rough it up, sandblast it, micro-etch it, and rebond it. And the solder joints, I think the reason the composite bridges work so well, they're very huge, very large. Remember the old Tetris came out there, Vargas came out, and it was breaking. It was supposed to be the new great ceramic, bridge material, and it just didn't have big enough solder joints. And I think that's the reason that composite bridges do so well. And also at the same time, I started building teeth out of composite. Basically, I'd take old crappy crowns off and do them in composite. And a lot of these people didn't have a ton of money. A lot of it was economically driven. And lo and behold, again, these silly crop that had an old porcelain things. They're 5 and 10 years old, and they're working, they're lasting. I remember years ago, Ron Jordan, probably about 80, 83, 84, 85. He said in composite, he said basically what you get at 18 months is what you get, and so that's great. Composite wears, it protects itself. That's my line. And you do these large fillings, and occasionally they fail, but I don't have a big problem with failure. And crowns fail, everything in dentistry, everything fails eventually. But anyway, so I don't do a lot of porcelain. I don't do a lot of veneers. I do them directly.
And that is one of my biggest pet peeves among dentists and their how they locker room talk. I mean, they always when two or more dentists get together, they always sound like engineers. When dentistry isn't about civil engineering, mechanical engineering, it's really a biology issue. I mean, it's the 1 trillion bacteria in our 3 pounds of gut microbiome, and we see that people with gum disease don't have decay rates. Low decay rates, people with high decay rates don't have gum disease. Sometimes they get on medications or catch viruses and get yeast infections. And at the end of the day, they're all going to fail from biology. But hey, I want you to what? There's kids in there. We have a lot of dental students are big fans of this podcast series. These are downloaded around the world. Walk the listener through your composite technique and try to be specific. My brand is that with the internet, no dentist should ever have to practice solo again. So give them name, brand, specifics, everything they need to know what Terry is actually, what you're using, okay, and what you're doing and why.
Okay, well, I use a rubber dam 99% of the time, and I have 39 years, and I think that's a big part. As Ed alludes to a lot on Dental Town, it's a big reason for the success of composite dentistry is rubber dam, good isolation. You're always going to have fluid seeping out of the crevice around the tooth, and if you don't have it sealed off and isolated, you might as well forget about it. I see a lot of poor composite dentistry in my world. Anyway, what I do, I'm using, I believe it's Bisco's etch. I'm not even sure. A lot of the stuff like that, it's a gel, and I always put it around the enamel first, and I flood the dentin with it. I try to etch enamel for 20 seconds, and the dentin probably 10 to 15, and I rinse it profusely for a few seconds, and I dry it either with my suction or my air syringe. I watch it till I evaporate most of the liquid, and there's just a sheen to it, a little bit of moisture, and I'm still using all bond too. I started in 91. John Kanka was in Moncton with Ron Jordan about 89 or 87, something like that, and talking about dent and bonding and all this stuff. And so I've been still using an old technique because the damn stuff works. I understand it. I mix my primers, A and B primer together, and I use a 3M cotton, 3M foam pledget, and they're just foam applicators, and the 2 drops go in a mixing well, and the foam applicator will pick up about 2/3 of that the first time, and I dab that on usually 5 times onto the dent. I don't try to put a lot on the enamel, although a lot of times it's impossible to avoid the enamel, but it doesn't do anything for the enamel. And I put 5 coats, and I go back to my well and get another, fill up the sponge again, and I put on 5 more coats. And it takes probably takes a minute for me to do my priming technique or step, but you remember what it was like before we could etch dent, before we could bond to dent, and etching enamel has been rock solid forever, and to be able to get that extra bonding strength with your dentin, I think it's worth a minute of my time. And to really, well, if I do say 2 MODs on a person, it takes me a better part of an hour. What's a minute? 60 seconds to get a good primed hybrid surface. And the other benefit, a lot of benefits to a hybrid surface, a good primed surface. Well, I never use a liner. I don't use any die-cal, or I don't use any bases under my composite, and that's what John Kanka taught me 25 years ago. I just put the resin on and light cure it, and a lot of times in the interior, and sometimes I cure the resin and the composite together. Sort of just depends. But I usually will cure my resin, and I put my composite in. I'm using a microhybrid. I haven't gone to the nanofills because they're not as strong. Basically, from what I've read, they're not as strong. They're 30% weaker than the microhybrids. That's a Z250 I tend to use most of the time. It's also cheaper because it's not in vogue like the your Ultra, your Filtrac Supreme Ultra. They're considerably more expensive, and they polish better, but they don't. The nanofillers polish better. That's the biggest advantage, but in the posterior, I don't think that's in the anterior maybe more so, but the posterior, the polish is, the Z250 is fine in the posterior. It loses its shine in the anterior over probably over 6 months. I'm not sure why. I've got a few patients that are able to maintain the Z250 just almost as well as Enamel, and I use Enamel in most of my highly aesthetic cases. I want enamel looking fillings. I use
Enamel. Are you talking about Buddy Mopper's Cosmedent in Chicago? Okay.
Yeah, Cosmedent. Yep, Cosmedents. Yeah. And that's at 2 feet you can't tell if it's enamel or porcelain in my book, in my mind, and so it's certainly a lot cheaper and the composites bond together really well. The Z250 and the enamel are very compatible. I've been bonding them together for 20 years now and haven't had any big problems. So anyway, that's sort of in a nutshell, and I do most of my finishing with a 74 weight football-shaped carbide, and it's got 30 flutes, and when I'm done, it's polished. The 30 fluted burr gives it a real nice polish, and you really don't need to touch the tooth after that. On the labial, I use a 7901 for most of my finishing, and I use soft flex discs. I always polish wet to start and dry to finish because it seems to give it a better shine. It works quicker if it's wet. The grit on the polishing disc, if you do it dry, doesn't tend to stick around it. I don't know. It just seems to work better if it's wet at the start. You get a polish quicker. And then when it's dry, it seems to give it a real shine. If you polish wet all the time, you won't get the shine. You just don't. Simple. I don't know if anybody ever noticed it, but you don't. At least I.
Who was that man that just walked by with a ponytail?
I didn't notice. That's my associate. I didn't see him, but anyway.
Oh, that's a dentist?
That's another dentist in the office.
Did you have him walk through with the ponytail just to make me feel even more bad and jealous? Were you trying to ruin my day?
He takes some extra Rogaine to keep that hair. That's not, his life isn't worth living, I don't think. Anyway, no, I didn't.
Okay, I want to go back to a few points of what you're saying. Okay, when I asked you your composite technique, the first thing you said was use a rubber dam.
Yeah.
Would you go as far to say that if you're not using a rubber dam or you can't use a rubber dam, and let's be frank, Terry. A lot of dentistry in many countries, they don't have the suction, they don't have the air water syringe, But would you say if you can't use a rubber dam that you should use amalgam?
Uh, I wouldn't really, I would say you probably should consider, getting another occupation. Rubber dam is
Why
just.
why are you against them? So I'm sensing that you're against
No, I'm
amalgam.
not against them. I loved amalgam. No. It's not. That's not the. I'm just saying if you don't use rubber dam, I don't know. I just don't think you can do the same quality dentistry day in and day out. You just can't do it. And I don't give a crap who you are. You can use an isolite or whatever. It's really hard to do good dentistry without good isolation. Period. There's
Do
just
you ever use the isolate?
I've never seen one. I've never seen. Oh, on Dental Town and dental products, I don't have one. No.
Okay, well, let's go back to that. I also think you said something interesting. You do 2 MODs an hour,
Oh well,
and I think well no, that you can't that you would schedule an hour for 2 MODs,
probably yes.
and you're providing an outstanding service. I mean, some of those composites that you post on Downtown, I just look at that and go, "Damn, is this guy an artist or a dentist?" And if you could do 2 of those an hour, I'm just saying something here where you talk about low cost. Well, a lot of people can't afford crowns and gold inlays. Like I only have 7 restorations in my mouth, and every one of them's a gold inlay only. But I have money for that type of work. But a lot of people who are doing the more expensive, like say a CAD cam, might be spending 3 hours on that. So if
Yeah.
you look at the fee of that and divide that by 3 hours, is each hour basically 2 MOD composites? It's there's a lot of money to be made in
Yeah.
placing direct composites on people with less money. That's what I'm trying to say. You don't have to.
Well, yeah, I agree.
And I always want to remind dentists there's a hell of a lot more money in McDonald's than there is in Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. But but
For
but I
sure.
want. But I want to go back to. I am sensing some vibes about amalgam, and you seem to be hesitant.
No. I loved amalgam. I just don't use it
Why did you quit?
because you can't bond the stuff for shit. It doesn't bond. My composite reinforced the tooth. Well, a lot of people poo-hoo that, but the reality is that I don't get the same amount of fractures and cusp fractures and stuff that you tend to see with amalgam. When people come in here,
Okay, so what year did you get out of dental school?
76.
And you said you did amalgam till 84?
Yeah, 84, and I loved it. I carved nice marginal ridges and polished it, and it was
So you did amalgam for 8 years, and then 84 to 2015. How many years is that?
uh,
Um,
30.
30 years. So in the 8 years of placing amalgams, you feel that you, through your own eyes and your own patient population, 8 years of amalgams, that the following 8 to 10 years, you saw more failures with that than the preceding first 8 years of doing composites from like say 84 to 92?
Yeah, and let me just qualify that a little bit. When I first started doing composites, probably in 83, 84. I did it for probably a year, and then I went back to a course again, and they said, whoever gave that course wasn't quite as keen as the previous instructor and stuff, and they said, you should look at these long and hard. And at the time, I was using heliomolar. That's my first composite, which is a microfill, which wears well. Heliomolar is a really nice material, and I still have heliomolar restorations running around. And so I looked at them really hard for the next 6 months because I did a few amalgams. And I kept seeing them, and I said, shit, these things aren't wearing. They're looking good. What am I going back to amalgam for? Amalgam, if it bonded, I would use it, but the bond strength is like 10% of the acid etching values you get. The bond strength on amalgam to enamel is basically zilch. They claim you can bond it, but the bond strength in comparison to a bonding to enamel is about 10% of the same. So anyway, and nobody wants mercury in their mouths. I mean, we all know, you and I know that if you went to the FDA today with this new wonderful tooth material, had a mercury in it, they'd laugh you out of the building. You wouldn't even get a chance to present your evidence. I mean, I don't replace every amalgam I see. I had a guy in here yesterday, one of these amalgams out. I said, you got a couple I'm willing to do, a couple bicuspids that are showing some wear. The rest of them are fine. I said, they probably will go to your graves. They were actually very nice amalgams in these molars. but he had a couple of ratty ones in the front. And I said, I no problem to change those. But I don't change all the amalgams, and I've got amalgams in my mouth.
Now, what city do you live on? Is it in the coast? Are you on the coast?
No, we're on the St. John River. It's Perth-Andover. Perth-Andover. It's a hyphenated word, 2 words.
Is that a fishing village?
Used to be good salmon fishing here until they built the dams on the St. John River, and then we're at a farming area, potato farming and lumber. We live in the woods, basically the forest. A lot of lumber companies here, Irving's and Fraser's, and a lot of farmers here. A lot of McCain's Foods is the big employer here. They're 25 miles above us and 25 miles below us.
I have mixed feelings about dams because yesterday the United States came out with a report that said the average dam in America was 52 years old, and I thought, well, that's good. I'm 52 years old, and then they said that is so damn old, they're all falling apart, and like twin that. And I'm like, wait a minute, that 52 is not old. So those damn dams. So I want to go back to when you said some people keep them more polished, and you use Enamel on the interiors. And I have to admit, I have very different standards in my office for women anterior. Actually, women, very high aesthetic needs. Someone comes in looking like me, we either just take them to the vet and put them down, or use amalgam or gold. But do you think the toothpaste they're using? I mean, remember Bob Ibsen, the founder of Dentad, who then went on to create Rembrandt? He had that Rembrandt toothpaste. Do you think that girls that are coming in with lustrous looking composites 3, 4, 5 years later, kind of out of the norm, do you think that's associated with these high polishing toothpaste like Rembrandt?
What it is the microhybrid is not it doesn't usually loses its glass. Like the microhybrid is what was the one there? I used to use it because I got in a bit of an argument one time with Ross Nash at a course in Bermuda, and I said this stuff. It was a microhybrid. Kerr makes it. What's the name of it? It's still in use today. It's still they've got a nano.
Z250 or
no? That's made by the 3M. Kerr makes the Herculite.
Okay.
Yeah, Herculite. And anyway, I said it won't stay polished, and he said, "Oh yeah, you just got to polish it right." And I said, "Well, whatever." But I've never found it's a microhybrid, right? That classification, and that's what Z250 is, and Z100 is as well. And they're microhybrids, and they just don't tend to keep their high polish after 6 months. But the guys, there's 2 gentlemen that have managed. I veneered their teeth and basically did a rehab on them, and both of them keep that damn stuff just as shiny as it almost looks like a microfill. And I've asked them, and I'm not sure why, but they don't seem to know either. So.
And I also want to say, when you say you're still using All Bond, which Bisco, that's Bisco, which was
right, Bisco, yeah.
Byung Saw, and now he's got 3 kids and a cousin running that in outside of Chicago. What generation was that? Was that 3rd generation?
That's fourth. That's
4th generation. And what are we on now? What generation are we on now?
7th, 8th, 9th.
Yeah, and also I have to agree with you. I mean, the first composite I ever used was Helium-Molar, and that was and I graduated dental school in 87, so the first time I ever used it was probably like 85, 86, and I still love it the most. And don't you think that some of these old and tried and true Ivoclar's Helium-Molar or a 4th generation Bisco A and B, don't you think a lot of these new generations are almost came out of the marketing department, and it seems like a lot of dentists just the only resourcefulness they have is how to drive up overhead. It's like, if they ever get any idea, it's how to raise their overhead. They never can keep it simple, stupid, use the old stuff that's been around for 10, 20, 30 years. And I know they're looking at us too and thinking, yeah, those guys are old coggers and they should have their license or retired. And we probably look like a Tyrannosaurus Rex interviewing a Stegosaurus Rex. But the bottom line is it's the low. You said it first. It's the lowest cost stuff. It's the new stuff is bloody expensive and could be bleeding edge. And some of the stuff I don't understand is like, okay, you have to mix A and B. So like, well, we got to get rid of that. I mean, really, you can't mix A and B. Really, you'll try something bleeding edge for twice the money because you can't mix a drop of A and B. I mean, at what point do you just throw in the towel?
I don't know how some of these guys get their dental degrees if they can't mix A and B together and dab it on a tooth for a few seconds, for 30 seconds, Jeff Brucham, I've heard him a couple times, and he's excellent on bonding, dent and bonding. And
Out of San Francisco.
Yeah, and his comparison is with hair conditioners. You know, you get shampoo, you shampoo your hair, and then you put the conditioner on. He said, well, you can buy these shampoo hair conditioners, but nobody likes them because they don't work as well. And it's the same with these single bond systems. The bond strengths just aren't there, and you know, you got to. They're. I'm always suspect when I see these results in the different magazines, because you know you don't see too many comparisons. I mean, Canker rails about this with his materials. He's got good materials, and you don't see too many comparisons right across the board where they start with the fourth generation, use 2 or 3 of those, 5th generation, 6, and do the same test, do the shear strength test and all. All you do is you read in the publicity in dental products. 3M needs a new, you know, they got to keep their dental industry going, so they make a new product. 3M does make good products, most of them do, but they're selling these new single bond systems, and they're convincing you it's cheaper or easier or some damn thing. It certainly isn't cheaper, but you know, if they don't work as well as the old stuff, why would you change? I've been burned. I've been in this dental business too long, and I got drawerfuls of stuff in there I give away because it was the latest and greatest. I'm getting better at it, but the latest and greatest isn't always the best. Simple as that.
Well, first in the interview, you have a handsome dentist with a ponytail walk by, and then you follow that up with an example of a shampoo and hair conditioner. So you're just really trying to throw me under a bus this morning, aren't you, Terry? And so basically, I want to go to another question about the. I want to go to another question. Well, first of all, that old stuff you have in your room, I'm telling you, the classified ads on Dentaltown, a lot of people don't realize those are all free, and I can give you the names of 50 dental assistants where the dentist said, you go sell all that old crap, all those, every toy junk thing I've ever bought, and I'll split the money with you. And there's dental assistants who made 5-10 grand in a week, got rid of some of these big 50,000 liters. And the only thing I will throw, mix it 4th generation under a bus is I don't know if it's me or the assistant, but you know, they say 1 drop of A and 1 drop of B. Well, how come when the A bottle's empty, the B bottle's still half full? I never quite figured that out. Maybe that's why they're trying to go to one step. So have you tried Kenka stuff? Do you use any of that? Or are you friends with John Kenka in Middlebury, Connecticut?
I know John fairly well from years ago because I was the CE chair of the Atlantic AGD, and he did probably 5 courses for us way back in the 80s and 90s. And I used to see him in Bermuda with Ron Jordan and Peter Jordan's crew, their clinical research and stuff. So I like John. John's a straight shooter, and he's got some good materials. I haven't used them because they're basically shouldn't cop out, but they're hard to not available in my part of the world. I think you have to order them. I'm not sure where you order them, actually, in Canada. I don't know. You don't see them advertised. Actually, I did see something from a company called Sure Dental here just a week ago, and it had a picture of John in it. But his material is good stuff. John knows his business. He does.
I want to expand Dentaltown magazine to Canada. For those viewers around the world, Canada demographically is another California. California is 10% of the United States. The United States is 330 million. California is basically 33 million, same as Canada. They have the same number of dentists, the same size economy.
No. California's economy is way bigger than Canada's economy.
It is bigger?
Yeah. Oh, hell yes.
Okay.
California is, you know, California, the land of fruits and nuts, basically.
Yeah.
That was what Raymond Bertolotti told me that a long time ago.
Yeah, Raymond. That's a blast from the past. Raymond Bertolotti. I saw him on Dentaltown posting the other night. I love that guy, and his wife Mary is adorable. So what other low pins? Is anybody still using pins? Do you see that in Canada? Do you think there's any need? I mean, some of these composite cases you're doing are big cases. I mean, tell us your thoughts on pins.
No pins. You don't need pins with composite. I mean, I don't know where I was taught that, but that's been something that's been sort of known for 20 plus years, I think. I had a patient in the other day, and he had an upper 6 molar with 3 big pins in it, and I just shuddered, and the guy had it done last summer, you know, I don't know why you'd put a pin in under a composite. There really is not much retentive value there.
Okay, and then I agree with that. But what about liners and bases? I mean, that seems to be it seems like there's a lot of differing opinions on that. What are your views on liners and bases?
I don't use them. Basically, Kanka said 25 years ago, if you got a hybrid layer, you plug the dental tubules, case over. There's no advantage to putting, if you got a bleeding pulp, I will pulp cap a tooth. I use Theracal for a small pulp cap, but
Theracal,
Theracal's the new stuff from I don't know who's Theracal. Who makes is that Ultradent or is that Bisco?
Is that a calcium hydroxide?
No, it's not calcium hydroxide. No, it's not calcium hydroxide. I think it's lithium. Oh, I don't know what the hell it is. I better not say. Anyway, Theracal. It's in they advertise the hell out of it now.
Just Google it.
Yeah, well, it's a good. If you're going to use a pulp capping thing, but why do you bother? That's my question. If you've got a hybrid layer, if you've primed your dentin properly, it's sealed. Just put your resin on and put your composite in. And save yourself all those steps. It's just another way to do the fillings quicker. If you want to save time, don't use pins. Don't use any liners or bases. They're not necessary. I don't have a lot of abscesses under these big composites. I mean, you've seen a lot of them. There's not much tooth structure left, and they go on. They chug along. They're primed. I just don't see the sense of it.
And talk more about bulk fill versus increments. What your thoughts on that?
Well, most of the teeth I fill, a regular routine, say MOD, would probably take me 4 to 5, 6 increments maximum. As I understand it, the bulk fills are not very good on. You can't use them on the occlusal surface because they're too soft, if I'm not mistaken, and everybody's going to have to put a layer over the occlusal. Well, you're into 2 steps. It doesn't take me that long. I have a curing light, Ultradent curing light. It works really well. I do a 10-second cure usually, and
is that okay? Ultradent. That's Dan Fisher in South Jordan, Utah. Is that an LED light?
Yeah, it's a good light. It's got 3 lights. There's 3 bulbs in it, and so you get each of your wavelengths. And I cure my resin 10 seconds, and I cure the increments 10 seconds, and I do the mesial wall. I do that in one piece. I wedge it, and I do the distal wall. If it's a really deep filling, I don't wedge it. I put the 2 millimeters along the gingival margin, and then harden that. Then I wedge that, because if you put I'm using plastic matrices, and if you wedge them really hard, they'll deform and deflect into the bus. So that's what you don't want to have happen. And so I usually will fill them. The matrices run to the gingiva. They're held against the gingival wall by the rubber dam, and just the friction, the damn things. And I use a matrix band, a lot of them, Talfamire, to hold them. But I just put 2 millimeters incisally and harden that. Then I wedge them, and then I get a good contact. So that's.
And what's the name of that Ultradent light?
It's a
does it have a knife? Does it have a knife on it? Or?
It's a big ad. It's just a big ad in the.
Okay, so I want to back you up a little bit. What you said was very, very profound. That it's counterintuitive. You think the harder you place that wedge in there, the more you're going to separate the teeth and you're going to get a tighter contact. But you're saying what happens is you deform the plastic, and now you're defeating the purpose of the wedge. Let's talk about context, because a lot of dentists tell me that the reason they prefer making indirects, and taking an impression and either sent to a lab, or an optical impression to the lab, or using CAD/CAM Cirac, or Plan Mecca just bought E4D, is the contact. You just said you're just using a regular old Talfamire, which came out of the Amalgam era. Have you tried any of these other matrices, like you always hear of Garrison and all these other ones? Triodent. Talk about contacts. How do you get a contact, and how specifically do you get a contact, and how do you do that?
Well, there's several ways. I've got some very small, thin bands that I got from clinical research, and they're very, very I don't know what, 1 or 2 thousandths of an inch, whatever it is. They're really tiny, but I use mostly Premier Dental's contoured matrix bands. They're blue colored now, and like I said, if I wedge them just like you would a regular metal matrix band, or if I feel that the gingival box is deep, I will add 2 millimeters roughly and cure that, and then I put my wedge against that, and that way I don't deform the band into the box. And we wedged amalgam for years, mind you, and you got good contact. Actually, a lot of times your contacts are too damn good. They were too tight. I mean, I don't know how many times over the last 30 years I've taken metal matrix finishing strips, the Brasler ones, and gone between amalgams to relieve the contact pressure because you couldn't hardly floss for them. And I've done that numerous times, and I do that a lot today, even with composite, because a lot of times the damn contacts are tight, and especially if some of the composite ones are sharp, they'll tear your floss, even though they're not a bad contact. They're just tight, and the occlusals sometimes when people do them, they don't open an embrasure there on the occlusal surface. And one way I do that is at 7901, I'll drag it across back and forth at a 45 degree angle, lay it right down in the contact, and just drag it back and forth and open up the contact, not the contact, open up the embrasure on the occlusal sort of thing, so you can get the floss started, so it's not two sharp angles, on the occlusal.
That flossing must be a Canadian issue because Americans don't floss. So you'll never have an American come in and say afraid to floss. They're usually yeah, I get my teeth flossed twice a year, and you do it both times. So that's interesting what you said. So you're filling the gingival floor before you place the matrix. I mean, before you place the wedge. That's a profound idea. That's a heck of a pearl. I bet a lot of dentists out there are scratching their head thinking that is a hell of an idea.
Well, what you can do if you're nervous about getting an overhang, and I do it sometimes, but a lot of times I can see in there with my magnification and my headlight. I mean, that's the other great thing besides rubber dams. Those 3 things are, if I didn't have the rubber dam and the headlight and the magnification, I'd probably quit dentistry. It's that important. And if you ever use it after a year, you'll never give up any of those 3 things if you use them regularly.
I'll tell you what, I bought myself a backup because I one day went in there and my something had happened and the lens had fogged. And I said, I'm not doing dentistry. And they go, oh, come on, you can do it without him. I'm like, no. Once you use that, so be specific. There's what brand of magnification are you using? What
I'm using Designs for Vision.
Designs for Vision, and that's and what magnification?
That's 2.5. I tried the 3.5, and I found that I couldn't find my hands, and I only gave it a half a day trial, and I just said, I see well enough. I mean, and I listen to these guys talk about scopes and stuff. They got 5 and 10 times magnification, and they try to make you feel inadequate, and they probably do. But I think 2.5 is the minimum. But I just found the 3.5 was, I don't know, I couldn't, there's a learning curve with it, and I just didn't bother to.
And I noticed your associate walking by with the ponytail. He had magnification too.
Oh yeah. Well, now nowadays, the last 3, 4, 5 years, it's 2.5 is compulsory at a dental school. It's required.
And I want to say something that every time I hear a dentist complain, like, what do you do when your hygienist's been with you for like 8 years and you go in there and you do a hygiene exam and they left a big old chunk of tartar on there, and I'm like, well, you're wearing loops. How come your hygienist isn't? So I buy them for all my hygienists, all my assistants. But you're right. Everybody stays at 2.5, but me. I did the 3.8, or is it 3.5 or 3.8? Next up from Designs.
Well, Designs for Vision was 3.5. I had some. So
yeah, that's what I went up to that. I mean, I'm in love with that. But yeah, magnification. You can't expect your dental assistant and your hygienist to be in the same league as you if you can see.
I have 2 hygienists, and the younger one took the magnification like a duck to water, and she loves it, and her work is better now for sure. I mean, because she sees everything, she sees so much better. And the other girl's older, and she doesn't want to do it, but I wish she would, because if you use it for a month, you you'll never go back.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you'll never go back.
Yeah.
And I told her I'd pay half of it, but actually after 6 months I said, you're good. I said, as long as you stay here for at least a year, and after a year I had paid the whole thing, and I told her if she stayed less than a year, she'd have to pay half of it. But she's been here 5-6 years now, or since.
So so I noticed that you're a hockey fan, and hockey does not promote oral health. All hockey does is knock teeth out. So
Hey. and I'm evidence of that. I got 3 front teeth rattled when I was a kid, or when I was 20. Hockey stick in the mouth, and 3 crowns, 3 posts, and cores and stuff. Yeah, long time ago. It's good for business, but we don't see hardly any hockey injuries anymore. My wife did smuck my son in the mouth playing hockey in the basement, playing street hockey in the basement, and I had to do a root canal in his front tooth, and he was 9 years old. So, but we don't see hardly any hockey injuries in the dental office now.
but I noticed I have heard that in Canada, everything beneath the pros, it's a face mask is mandatory.
Oh yeah, there's shields, they're face shields.
Yeah, but the pros
the whole
still
thing.
use them.
No, well, the pros are it's an image thing, but most of them do wear the shields now for their eyes. That's the only reason I'd wear a shield, is for your eyes. To hell with your teeth. I mean, you can get your teeth fixed, but your eyes you can't.
But I don't ever see hardly pro hockey players wearing shields.
They wear eye shields. A lot of them do. Yeah, you just
eye shields.
Yep. You see the helmet, and you don't probably see the shield because it only comes down to their nose. But a lot of them wear them. A lot of them do.
Huh. And your greatest citizen left now lives up the street from me, the Wayne Gretzky, right?
Well, he was at one time, probably, for sure. Did you do his teeth?
No, I didn't do his teeth, but
somebody
did.
He's he didn't have those teeth when he left Canada. I know that.
That's so funny when they built that team down here, the Phoenix Coyotes, and man, during a game they will pan to the bench, and everybody I guess takes their partial out for the game because they'll pan that whole bench, and I think all the players combined only have 30-40 teeth. They're all missing front teeth in large numbers. So I'm gonna take I'm 40 minutes. I'm 2/3 down and 40 minutes down. I only got 20 minutes less. I want to switch gears. I don't want to frame you as someone who just does composites. You've been doing dentistry for 3 decades.
Almost 4.
Almost 4 decades. So I want to ask you a couple of questions. You got 5,000 American children coming out of dental schools each year. They're carrying on average $250,000 to $300,000 in student loans. If your own child that your wife was abusing in the basement with a hockey stick, knocking his front teeth out, if your own child was walking out of dental school right now in the United States or Canada and was packing $250,000 to $300,000 of debt, what fatherly advice would you give that young child?
Well, I'd go to get the hell out of the cities. I know that. I know parts of northern Maine are underserviced. I'm not sure how much money you'll make, but you'd at least make a pretty good living. And that's a tough question, really. We have the same thing in Canada. I mean, they're not probably coming out with 300,000, but 200,000. I know my associate here, when he graduated, he was $200,000 in the hole, and he is associating in Canada. When they associate, most of the people, the deal is you get 40% of what you gross. That's a pretty standard thing. And most guys will practice, they'll associate 2 or 3 years, and they'll buy in or whatever, and or else they'll take off on their own. But it's harder and harder to do that. Although in the States, I think you got a lot more dentists per capita than we do. I'm not sure how many we're graduating a year in Canada, but I don't think it's anywhere near the number you guys are graduating. I don't know. It's a tough question.
Well, you are saying something profound, and that is in America, 2/3 of the graduates go to where half the people live in the 117 largest towns.
Yeah.
And then 1/3 go to where they're needed. I mean, we see this. Canada. I mean, Canada. What is Canada like? Twice the size of the United States in square kilometers.
It could be. It could be. It's pretty huge.
Yeah. And we see that over and over in America, where those kids who go to those small towns where they're needed. I mean, supply and demand. You should go where you're wanted, and they always want to go where nobody wants them. I want to ask you another question. These dentists coming out of school, a lot of them are complaining about $250,000 of student loans, but then they walk out of school and they'll buy a $150,000 CAD cam and a $150,000 CBCT 3D X-ray machine and a $50,000 laser. It's like, man, you just doubled your dental school debt with 3 purchases. So if it was your daughter that just walked out of dental school and she said, Dad, I'm already 250 into this. I'm going all the way. I'm going to do another 250 and get a CERAC and a CBCT and a laser. What would you tell her about that? Because if she's thinking, I need to do that to be a good quality dentist like my dad, what would you tell her?
Well, actually, I'm encouraging my daughter to. She's finishing her master's in kinesiology right now, and I've been encouraging her to go into dentistry. And she's thinking. I think she's going to take a couple courses next year and try to get in. But I know there's a young fellow 5 miles away, 6 miles away, and he bought a practice, and man, they laid some money into that thing, and they renovated 6 operatories and all new equipment and a CAD cam and a digital X-ray, and I don't know, they must have spent $300,000-400,000, and I know he's not as busy as he'd like to. I don't know. I think when you get that far in debt, your judgment's you got to be careful, because you see those fillings, and they're not that bad, because I see a lot of stuff, and it's getting worn and chipped. I said, well, we'll catch that next time. We'll keep an eye on it, and check it in 7 months, 9 months, a year. I don't jump all over it. My associate, on the other hand, he'll see patients of mine when I'm not here, and I get back and there's guys coming in for 3 fillings, and I said, well, look, we've been watching those fillings for several years. I don't sort of need the money, I guess, and I don't need the business, so I don't, I'm in a good position. But if I was hungry and had $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 in debt, I might be inclined to do those fillings. And is it a bad decision? They're probably going to have a better filling, but where is the point where you decide to let it go for another year, or do you jump on it and do it? That's a judgment call, and that's a hard, it's a hard thing to. It's a hard.
Well,
call.
like how they say, the easiest dollar earned is $1 in taxes delayed. The second easiest dollar earned is $1 in expenses saved, and the hardest dollar you'll ever earn is doing another $1 of sales and paying your overhead and trying to take home $1. And it's amazing how some dentists just have no problem with 40 to 45% overhead. And other dentists, I mean, it's like when they hit 75% overhead, the only thing they'll do in the next 5 years is figure out how to get it to 80. I mean, like I say, their only resourcefulness is spending money and driving up their overhead. And we were talking about how if you don't have the money, you don't have the money. So there's no spending it. Now, on your associates, are they an employee associate, or are you going to partner with them?
Well, that's a good question. Where the office building I have is in a flood zone now. The river flooded here a few years ago, and if you wanted to buy this building, you can't get a mortgage from the banks because it's part of the flood zone, and the banks won't touch anything in a flood zone. So he's not keen on buying the building. So it's sort of up in the air. We're trying to. I'm not sure what we're going to do.
So how can I ask how old you are, Doc? How old are you?
60. I'll be 68 in 3 weeks.
Okay. Do you remember when we were little, they were saying the planet was cooling?
Yeah.
And now they're all saying it's warming. Do you think it turned into a flood zone because in your lifetime, do you think it's global warming that's causing the oceans to rise?
Well, that's part of it. It's definitely the climate, because we get a lot more swings. Part of the problem here in New Brunswick, about 2/3, let me see, what's the figure? Approximately 10,000 square miles in northern Maine all drains into this river that goes. The river, a lot of the rivers in northern Maine, they drain north and then they drain east into Canada, into New Brunswick. So we got a lot of water coming at us, and Maine gets a lot of snow, and they've been cutting the forest to beat hill. It used to be your forests were trees that rained, the snow would lay under the trees, and the sun didn't hit it till May or June. Now it's just bare. There's not a lot of trees, or they're very small, so it melts a lot quicker. The runoff is faster. It just bang, and within a week or two everything melts, and it's running by us, and that's a big part of it. So that's not really global warming. It's global warming caused by man cutting all the damn trees down. So there's a lot of combinations, a lot of things. But global warming definitely is part of it, because the north of Canada, the Eskimos, the ice is melting. The polar bears don't have any ice flows anymore because the damned ice is melting. So it's definitely part.
And I want to say one thing to the viewers, though. A lot of these kids will go out and they'll get a job, and they'll get paid. In the big cities like in Phoenix, I pay my associates 25%, because God, there's 2 dental schools, 1,000 gazillion dentists. But I know to get a dentist to go in some of these very small towns, they'll pay him 40%, sometimes 50%, because that's supply and demand. You might be the only guy who will live in a town of 5,000. But what I want to cost these young kids is then they're humans are control freaks. They're territorial. They want to buy into a piece of rock. And I always remind them that marriage. You find someone you want to have sex with and get naked with and have children, and that fails half the time. And now you're going to marry an old dentist who you don't get naked with, have sex with, you don't have children, you don't celebrate holidays, and it's just, gosh, it's almost usually a really bad idea. And I would tell a young kid, if you're working in an office and you're getting 40%, that means that half the average overhead in America is 65%. So if you locked in at 40%, you already have 5% less overhead than the average dentist in America, and you don't have any of the stress of ownership. You're not carrying debt. You're not paying interest on money. My God, why? How many marriages do you know where they dated for 5 years and it was just like beautiful, and then they get married and the whole thing goes to crap, and 2 years later they're divorced? And I don't know.
I think that happened to me.
What part of that story?
I guess it was 10 years. No, I was divorced.
Oh, okay. And yeah, so that's true. When the only women who want my autograph, they want it on an alimony check. And so then also you're a member of the Academy of General Dentistry. If a young kid came up to you and said, "Hey, boss, dues, AGD, is that a good thing? Do you recommend that? How did that affect your career?"
Yeah. Well, in my case, the courses I was going to when I first heard Ron Jordan and John Kanka were put on by AGD, and probably 10 years after those courses, one of the guys involved in the AGD pestered me a little bit, and I joined it probably 15 or close to 20 years ago now, and so I'm part of the academy, and we provide 3 courses a year, 3 one-day courses a year, usually in Moncton, New Brunswick, and we get anywhere from probably from 50 to 150 people at our courses, and we get to, the nice thing is, being part of the executive, we get to pick the guys that come to talk, the speakers, the CE speakers. So, if there's somebody I want to hear or see, we try to get them. So that's good for me, and I also go to a fair bit of CE. I enjoy CE. I enjoy learning. It's nice to keep ahead of the curve a little bit, or try to.
I want to say to the young viewers what the AGD did for me, and that is, I think when young kids come out of school and they take their own courses, they just take a few little areas because that's where you're interested. And I remember when I signed up for the AGD, I wanted to get my FAGD, and then I saw that I was like 16 classes and like 8 different areas or whatever. It was 500 hours over 5 years, take a test, but they spread out. And I got so mad because I called the guy that talked me into joining, and I said, I don't want to take classes in these subjects. And he just said, Howard, he goes, you need to cross train. And the greatest implantologist, Carl Misch, was because he was a removable prosthetics guy first. And he'd see these people putting dentures on 4 implants and a hater bar and then be complaining that the implant was weak and snapped. And Carl said, well, hell, your bite was off so bad. That was the worst denture I'd ever seen. And Carl was always saying, to learn how to do fixed removable, you need to learn removable first. I look at the TMJ people. I mean, they say things that if you just did one single orthodontic case in your entire lifetime, you would know is crazy. And they've never done an ortho case. So, you have to learn ortho to understand occlusion. Everything's cross-training. And what I liked about it, so I'll just succinctly say, how many times would you walk into a convention and take a dental pharmaceutical course on different antibiotics when you could have a super sexy implant implant course or bone grafting, but you're like, oh, I got to go take this pharmacy course because I'm trying to get my FAGD, then later my MAGD. And then when you get done with that course, you're like, God dang, I'm glad I took that course. And so I never would have taken half the courses. In fact, the funniest thing was to do the implants. I literally was yelling at the guys saying, I'm not ever going to place implants. Why can't I take them in something else? He goes, Howard, just take the implant course. So to knock out my whole deal, I signed up for Carl Mish's 7 3-day weekends so I could just knock out that requirement. And little did I know, by the end of the first day, I was in love with Carl Mish. I was in love with implants, and it was all brought to me by the AGD, forcing me into this curriculum. So, and then the second thing I would say about the AGD is that when you join and go to those meetings, it's the friends you make, because you're sitting at, I mean, how many friends have you made in the AGD that have, yeah, and they have similar interests like you? I mean, some dentists aren't into CE and others are, and to walk into meetings, have all these CE junkie friends, then they turn into your bike riding friends and jogging friends, and or in my case, drinking buddy friends. But so I'm down to just 3.5 more minutes. Give your daughter that just walked out of dental school any more fatherly advice from a man who's coming up on 4 decades of doing dentistry, and they're just coming out of dental school. What other low-hanging fruit advice would you give her?
As I sent a little blurb I sent to Rebecca there, but I enjoy my work. I think dentistry is the greatest job in the world. You get to change people's smiles or improve their smiles. They come into you in pain and they walk out very thankful, and they pay me money to do this, which is, I find, very amazing. And they pay us good money. And I just think I'm very fortunate to be where I am in this point. And retirement, a lot of people, they're at me about when I'm going to retire, and I'm probably going to work for a few more years, and I might work for longer. I don't know. As long as I'm healthy, and I'm relatively healthy. I just, retirement scares the hell out of me, and a lot of people too today. You'll see a lot of people over the age of 65 continuing to work, and some of them into their 70s. And I can't imagine that you'll retire when you're 65.
Well, I was going to tell you that I think retirement's crazy. I mean, I know so many dentists. Basically the only safe investment you would have would be a government bond, which pays 5%, and you would need $1 million for every $50,000 a year you're going to make. And I know I was talking to a good friend of mine last night, Kenny Anderson. He just celebrated his dental office 50 years, and we were sitting here, and he's like, he still does Tuesdays and Thursdays from 6 to noon and still makes more money than you and I. I mean, just crushing it. And it's like, he still loves it. He gets out of the house. I think a lot of deal about the retirement is, they work crazy hours to the end, then they just cut it off and sell the practice. Well, then the government's going to take half your money. And why don't you just kind of slow down, enjoy life? If you quit working Fridays, if you hate staying late, I think the goal should be every year you work 1 hour less and make $1 more. And like what Dennis, one of my friends always says, that he'd rather be beaten with a belt than do a root canal. Well, then that's what endodontists are for. Just do what you like, gradually slow down and play, because when you don't retire, you're going to make so much money by staying in the game, and it's much more healthier, and it's a better lifestyle. And
Yep.
well,
I've worked 32 hours a week, 4 days a week for the last 30 years. So, I'm done between Thursday night at 5 o'clock and Monday morning at 5 o'clock Monday morning. That's half of a week. So I work basically my 4 days in half of a week, and then I have a half a week off, and that's good on your head, real good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey Terry, I want to thank you for your 1,200 posts on Dentaltown. You're a meat and potatoes guy. You're always showing great dentistry. So many people have, I'll say, why do you like Dentaltown? And they're always name dropping you, watching your techniques, and again, everybody wants to talk about these sexy Star Wars CBCT and lasers and all that stuff, and man, you're just keeping it real on daily family dentistry, direct composites, fourth generations, still in love with the old stuff. And man, I just wish all my viewers are on Dentaltown or iTunes or YouTube would actually log on and do a search for Terry Shaw. And Terry, thank you so much for all that you do for dentistry and for Dentaltown. And tell your daughter that if she doesn't go to dental school, that's a hell of a lot easier to marry a dentist than to go to dental school. All right, Terry, thanks again for all you do, buddy. All right, bye bye.